Hi, I'm Daniel from Too Sick Internet Solutions, the makers of Too Sexy, which is the most popular structured content plugin for DNN. And in our Creators 101, we're now going to go the next step from our Hello World application to actually adding some data and showing it. So let's check it out. The things we're going to look at is what are certain very basic things like content types and fields. We're going to look at the edit user interface, and we're going to make a view that shows some content by default so people have a good idea of what it's going to do and lets them add their own content in their own way. So if you need anything more, remember that's the link you want to go for. There you will find the other tutorials before and after, and additional links to toolings and help and checklists just to get started. So let's go. Here is the previous app, the way it ended after the first tutorial. We have a Hello World bucket list for creators. Now, of course, an app that just shows the same stuff all the time would not be very exciting. So we're going to want to add some data. Now, the first thing you want to know is data always starts with something called a content type. Think of it as like the definition of what fields something has. Because if I'm going to describe, let me say I would describe a location, I would need GPS coordinates and maybe a name and maybe a picture. But if I'm going to describe a product, well, I won't need the GPS coordinates, but I might need a price and a bunch of other fields to describe it. So it always starts with a schema. Now I'm going to create a new content type, and I'm just going to call this idea. Because this is like going to describe an idea that I have for my bucket list, which is what we're building here. So this is an idea. And you can tell we don't have any ideas yet, and there are no fields yet. So let's start with adding some fields just so that we can start collecting this thing. So let's give this thing, each idea should have a name. This is just going to be a text field and a simple one at that. And let's add a description. This is also going to be a text field, and this should be a WYSIWYG editor. So you get this word experience. So let's just save this. And that was it. We now made a schema for this content type that has two fields. Later on, we're going to add pictures and related information and stuff, but this is the best way to start. Now here we have the idea, and the fastest way to add one is to hit plus here, and you will see we now have a name and we have a description. Now let's just customize something, because you notice the description always opens a dialog, and maybe we don't like that. So I can go back to the fields, go to the description, and change the configuration. And for example, in this case, I'm going to say, just put this dialog directly in the screen. I could also put more things here like additional hints and help text, but that should be enough. And if I now go in here, I will have the description directly in line. So that should give you an idea of just how you can actually configure fields and do a lot more. So let's say the first idea that we have is learn Too Sexy 11. And as a description, we'll just say, okay, I really want to learn this. Someone said it's kind of neat. And what will this entail? Well, first of all, we're just going to have to watch some tutorials, try it out, and then, well, maybe create our own tutorials. So we just created this idea. And you can see we made one. I could create another one, or I could go and click on the type name here, and you will see this is a list of all the items we already created. I'm going to just create another special one. We're going to call this one the Lorem Ipsum. You might have seen this. A lot of texts have this. And the reason we're going to do this is you'll see in a second that when people use an application, they would often like to have a preview to get an idea what this will look like. And that's what we're doing now. So we now have two items. They're both ideas. One of them is a dummy. Now we're going to create a view that shows this. You remember we created the introduction view previously. That's the one that shows Hello World. So let's create another one and say one idea. Just to have one idea. Not super exotic. We're going to also not select the introduction, but create a new one. Let's just, in terms of the files stay together, idea 1. And what we're also going to do is we want to say it should show an idea. And as the demo, we're going to show this Lorem Ipsum data, just so it kind of shows something, right? We created a view now, which should show this data. Now let's see what happens if we go back to the application. Currently, it still shows the initial view we made, but let's switch views and say we would rather show one idea. Now, you'll notice that it doesn't do a whole lot because it just says put your content here. Now, this is because we created a new template file. It doesn't have anything. So let's go and edit that one as well. And we're back to the code editor, and I can just start writing stuff here. So now, how do I get the data? Because basically, it's somewhere. I just need to show it here. For the first example, I'm just going to write it in. And I'm going to write @content.name. Now, why did I say that? Why did I write that? I'll explain that in a moment. But let me just save this. This is the switch back to here and reload it. And you'll see it's showing the demo idea, the Lorem Ipsum. Now, I'm going to go back to the code editor. And you can see we have a bunch of snippets here, which just show all kinds of things I could do. For example, I could have app things, or in this case, I'm interested in the fields that I'm using. You see, name is the field we just used previously. Let us under that add the description and save that. See, just that simple. Now, if I go back here and refresh, you'll notice that it doesn't look exactly like you expected it to because it has HTML in it. And this is because the HTML editor creates normal HTML, and for safety reasons, we have to say which fields we're going to show with the HTML and which ones not. This is for protection, because otherwise people might add scripts or something to your page and you're not even aware of it. Now, if we look at the description here, it just tells us it's a string. There are some more things you can do with it, but the basic idea here is that we can say html.raw, and doing this will actually cause this item to be treated as safe HTML. So now the HTML is gone, but if it had something bold in it, it would appear correctly. Just to quickly demonstrate that, let's change the demo item that we had for the Lorem Ipsum, just for a short looking at this. Let's go to the idea and say, instead of showing the Lorem Ipsum item, let's show the one that has a little bit more text, right? As you can see, the HTML is not shown on screen anymore, it just works. And that's the very basics of the fields. Now, you may be wondering what's happening behind the scenes, and there's two things I'd like to show you before we finish this video. The first thing here is that this content item here is automatically provided to you by the system. So the system says, okay, here's my configuration. Let's have this data put into content. Which means, let me go here. This is still the demo item, remember? Let's pretend I wanted to add something new. If I hit edit and it's showing the demo item, it will open an empty form because the demo was just here to give you a preview what this thing is. So let's have another idea. For example, let's travel to Switzerland. I heard it's beautiful here. It actually is. And so you could add a bunch of descriptions here, but not too important. Let's just type a little bit here. And now the variable content contains the data that I actually edited myself. If I hit edit again, by the way, it will of course now open the one that I added, because it only happens the first time when it's showing a demo preview and you go into editing that it shows you the other one. So what I wanted to say is content is provided by the system. It knows which data has been filled in, or if it doesn't have data, it knows, oh, I'm going to pick up this demo item and give it to you there. And you can see sometimes we have to just show the value. In some cases, we want to HTML encode it. And here's a very special one that we never talked about yet, but this is doing some magic here. This edit.tag toolbar, and you can see it's inside the div tag, gives you this floating navigation here. And this is now really tied to this item. So the more items you have, you'll have more toolbars, but each one knows which one it's for. So this concludes lesson 2, content items, fields, showing data, using the toolbar, and just getting stuff out there. I hope you like it. We'll continue in the next part. If you forget where the other videos are, check out the short link that we're showing right here. And yeah, see you in the next part. Daniel, 2SIG Internet Solutions.